My name is Emily Carson. I'm a wildlife photographer. A few weeks ago, I took time off to get away and focus on shooting rare animals out in nature. I rented this old, isolated farmhouse in Flathead County, Montana, way out in the quiet valleys. The place was completely surrounded by pine forests, and I'm pretty sure the nearest neighbor was miles away. I've always enjoyed working in remote places, but something about this trip felt different. When I first got to the farmhouse, I met the owners, an older couple named Mr. and Mrs. Holt. They handed me the keys and seemed friendly enough. But right before leaving, they said one thing that stuck with me. Just make sure you keep the back window shut at night. They said it casually, like it was nothing. But it felt weird. I smiled and nodded, trying not to overthink it. The farmhouse was old but solid. Wooden walls, creaky floorboards, antique furniture in every room. And deep in the back, a heavy rusted basement door. I didn't plan on going down there unless I absolutely had to. For the first few days, everything was fine. I'd go out early, hike through the woods, take photos of birds and animals, come back home, cook something simple, and fall asleep. It honestly felt peaceful, like the perfect solo escape. But on the fourth night, something changed. I suddenly woke up around 2:13 a.m. Outside, I heard a soft, steady whistling, a simple tune, almost like an old lullaby. It was coming from the backyard. I got up and looked through the window, but everything was still. Just darkness and trees. I told myself it was probably a bird or the wind hitting something the right way. The next night, it happened again. Same time, 2:13 a.m., same exact whistling. That time, I felt it in my chest. Like my body knew something was wrong, even if my brain was trying to explain it away. I decided I needed to do something. The third night I pretended to sleep, but stayed awake on purpose. And right at 2:13, it came again, that soft, creepy whistle. This time, it felt like it was coming from right near the fence, closer than before. I couldn't see anything, but I could feel something. Like there was a presence out there, watching. The next morning, I set up my DSLR on a tripod, pointing at the backyard, and turned on motion detection. If anything moved out there, it'd automatically record. I wanted to believe this was all just an animal, or maybe some harmless wanderer passing by. I was still trying to stay logical. That night I couldn't sleep. When 2:13 hit, the whistle came again, louder and clearer than ever, like someone was standing right outside my window. I froze. I couldn't even bring myself to check this time. I just laid there, staring at the ceiling, waiting for the sound to stop. As soon as the sun came up, I ran to check the camera footage. The frame was totally still, just the dark backyard, slightly blurry, trees swaying in the wind. But then, clear as day, the whistle played. Same exact melody. But visually, nothing. No person, no animal, not even a flicker, just the woods. And that sound, I replayed the clip over and over, zoomed in, adjusted the contrast, but there was still nothing. Just that eerie, unsettling melody. Something about it gave me chills, like it wasn't just a sound. It was a message. I didn't tell anyone. Who would believe me anyway? But that day, I realized I wasn't alone out here. Maybe I never was. Something or someone was still tied to this house. And every night at exactly 2:13, it wanted me to hear it. After that night's recording, Emily completely lost her sense of peace. She wasn't confident anymore, and the farmhouse no longer felt like the calm retreat she had imagined. One question kept repeating in her mind. If there was no one in the video, who was whistling? She stopped looking forward to the nights. In fact, she started dreading them. As the sun went down, her anxiety would rise. She avoided staying out late, double-checked all the locks, and waited every night for that sound. Because now, 2:13 a.m. had become like a rule. That same whistle, same tune, same exact time. But one night, it got worse. The whistle sounded closer. So close she was convinced someone was standing right outside her bedroom window. She didn't move. Couldn't. She just curled under the blanket, paralyzed. And in her gut, she knew this wasn't a person. But it wasn't an animal either. It was something else. Something that stood like a person, but moved like nothing she'd ever known. That night, she could feel it watching her. The next morning, she finally went outside, and under the bedroom window, deep in the soil, were fresh footprints, heavy, like boots. And she hadn't seen a single trail or break in the fence around the farmhouse. No way in, but somehow someone had been standing there. That was the moment she called the police. She needed help. A few hours later, Sheriff Brooks arrived, a calm, quiet man. Emily told him everything: the whistle, the camera footage, the footprints. He listened and then simply said, "People around here don't go near that house." Emily asked why. He looked her in the eye and said, "Because that farmhouse, it's strange. Years ago, a couple lived here, survivalists. They liked to stay isolated. Then in 2009, they just vanished. No signs of violence, no robbery, just gone." At this point, Emily felt like she wasn't just living in the farmhouse, she was becoming a part of it. Every night at 2:13, the whistle wasn't just scaring her anymore. It was pulling her, like it was activating something inside her. That same afternoon, for the first time, she decided to open the attic. The stairs creaked with dust and age, and the attic smelled of old wood and mold. In the far corner was a small wooden box, closed but not locked. When she opened it, her heart skipped. Inside were old handwritten notes, the ink smudged like they'd been written in a panic. A harmonica sat beside them, the same melody, the same whistle. When Emily picked it up, she felt a chill, like someone else's breath still lived inside it. There were also 2 VHS tapes, labeled in shaky handwriting, March 2009 night footage. Emily dug out the old VHS player and played the tape. Static, then grainy footage appeared. A man and a woman whispering in the dark. The camera was set to face the backyard. And then, the whistle, 2:13 a.m. Both people turned toward the camera. The man looked terrified. He whispered, "It comes every night." To hear its song. A long, thin shadow appeared at the edge of the frame. And then static again. The video cut off. Emily sat frozen, playing the tape on repeat. This wasn't random anymore. It was a pattern. Maybe the couple had tried to call something with the melody, or maybe they were trying to stop it. But now, Emily was in the same house. Same time, same whistle. That night, she went to return the harmonica to the attic, but as she reached for the box, she heard someone breathe in the dark. She spun around, no one there. And then, the harmonica played a long note, by itself. No hands, just that soft, haunting melody echoing through the attic. Like someone was trying to speak through it, not with words, but with music. Emily was no longer confused. This wasn't human. It wasn't an animal. It was something else. And every night, it came back. For its song. Emily was no longer the same person. The girl who had come to the quiet valleys of Montana for wildlife photography now woke up every morning in fear, drenched in sweat, messy hair, red eyes, and a body that wouldn't stop shaking. Even during the day, she felt uneasy. She would sometimes see shadows moving along the farmhouse walls, or a tall, hazy figure reflected in the mirrors, always just behind her. Every time she reviewed her photographs, there was a dark silhouette, hiding somewhere, behind a pine tree or near the corner of the porch. But she could swear there was nothing there when she took those shots. This wasn't paranoia anymore. Something was deeply, silently present around her. Emily called Sheriff Brooks again. She hoped someone would finally take her seriously. When the sheriff arrived, something about him seemed off. His eyes looked exhausted, his answers felt vague, and his behavior was strange, like he knew what she was going through, but couldn't say it out loud. All he told her in a serious deadpan tone was, "Never open the basement door." Emily froze. She'd never mentioned the basement to anyone. From then on, the nights became worse. The whistling no longer came from the backyard. It started coming from inside the farmhouse, and eventually, from the basement stairs. One night, Emily woke up and clearly heard it, that slow, steady whistle, now coming from the direction of the basement. She sat up, trembling. The basement door was slightly open, but she knew she had shut and locked it herself, tight. The next night, she grabbed her flashlight and decided to go down. Her footsteps were silent, but her heart pounded louder with each step. She slowly opened the door. Stairs led down into darkness, cold and dusty. As she descended, the air got heavier. At the very bottom was just an old wooden chair, and on the wall in front of it, scratched into the wood, were the words, "We sing to IT." Her stomach dropped. Those were the exact words she'd heard on the VHS tape, now carved like part of some ritual, not meant for God, but something else entirely. She moved the flashlight across the room, and that's when the basement door slammed shut behind her. It was loud, like someone had violently slammed it with anger. Emily ran up the stairs, but when she reached the top, the door was gone, replaced by a flat cement wall, smooth, solid, like no door had ever been there. She started screaming. She banged on the wall, yelling for help. Her voice echoed against the cold basement walls, but no one answered. Then, 2:13 a.m., and just like every night, the whistle returned. This time it was right there, inside the basement. Close. Emily spun around, flashlight shaking in her hands. The sound was coming from the far corner. She wasn't alone. She swept the light across the space, and for just a moment, she saw a face. Long, pale, perfectly still, like a blank porcelain mask. It didn't move, it just watched. The whistle was coming from that same corner. When she pointed the flashlight back again, the face was gone. Just the wall, empty, as if it had never been there, or like it only appeared when the light turned away. Her screams slowly faded. Her voice went dry. She collapsed against the basement wall, frozen, as the harmonica's whistle played. Again and again, until it slowly faded into silence. That's where the story ends. Emily Carson was never found. Weeks later, when Mr. Holt came to retrieve the farmhouse keys, the house was locked, but everything inside was untouched. Her camera, her bag, her laptop, and in the attic, that same harmonica. Locals say it still plays by itself, right at 2:13 a.m. So if you ever pass near that farmhouse, and your clock hits 2:13, don't stop, because it's still there. And it still wants to hear the song that was never meant for us. My name is Dylan Parks. I'm a 21-year-old college student, and this story took place during my summer break when I went to stay with my Uncle Mike on his farm in Ottumwa, Iowa. I just wanted a few peaceful weeks away from the noise of the city, to be surrounded by open skies, quiet fields, and the fresh air of the countryside. My uncle's farm was huge, cornfields stretching for miles in every direction. When I first arrived, everything felt like something out of a postcard. Blue skies, endless crops, and the earthy scent of farmland in the breeze. The farmhouse was old but solid, built from wood, with a big porch out front and a tall silo behind it that looked like it had been there for decades. The first few days were great. I'd wake up early, help my uncle with chores, switch out irrigation pipes, drive the tractor, and relax in the afternoons with a cold beer. At night we'd grill food, listen to crickets, and watch the stars. I honestly thought it was shaping up to be one of the most peaceful summers I'd ever had. But slowly, something began to change. It was subtle, but once I noticed it, I couldn't unfeel it. One evening, while we were grilling out back, Uncle Mike casually said to me, "Don't go into the back cornfield at night, especially not where the crops grow tall. Strange stuff used to happen out there. I laughed and asked, "Like what?" He smiled but didn't answer, just looked away from me and stared out toward the field. I figured it was probably just an old farm legend or something that stuck with him. A couple nights later, I was driving the tractor alone near sunset. It was the last round of the evening. The sun was low, casting long shadows across the corn. That's when I saw it, in the middle of the cornfield, a tall, thin shadow. It was just standing there, completely still, perfectly straight. It didn't move. I stopped the tractor and stared at it for a few seconds. But the moment I looked again, it was gone, like it was never even there. I told myself I was probably just tired, or maybe the light and movement of the crops had messed with my eyes. But that night, I woke up in a cold sweat, heart racing, like someone had whispered my name right next to me. The next morning, I went through some of the photos I'd taken the night before while working in the fields. I zoomed into one and froze. In the background, in the same area where Uncle Mike had told me not to go, I saw a faint human-shaped blur. It was almost like someone was standing in the mist, too faded to make out clearly, but definitely there. I showed the photo to Mike. He looked at it, said nothing, just let out a deep breath and quietly walked out onto the porch. That silence scared me more than if he'd told me anything at all. I started avoiding that part of the field completely. But every night, it was like the wind itself was trying to tell me something. Usually, the breeze blew in from the far side of the farm, but one night, I noticed it was blowing from inside the cornfield. Like something in there was breathing, and each breath sent a cold gust toward me. The air didn't feel peaceful anymore. It felt damp, like the smell of something rotting, or like someone's breath was hidden in it. I found myself constantly glancing toward the cornfield, like something out there was pulling my eyes to it. And every time I looked, it felt like something was looking back. That cornfield didn't just have crops anymore. Something else was in there. Something that had been there long before me. And now, it wasn't just watching the field. It was watching me. When Dylan's girlfriend Zara arrived at the farm, it brought him a bit of comfort. She had come down from Des Moines to spend part of her summer break with him, and Dylan saw it as a chance to reset. He didn't tell her everything, just hinted that some things around the farm were weird, but he tried to keep the vibe light when she first got there. Zara liked the peaceful farmland, especially during the evenings when the sky turned golden and the air cooled down. But within just a few hours of her being there, Dylan noticed that same uneasiness on her face, the same feeling he'd been carrying for days. That first night, they were sitting on the farmhouse porch, sipping tea and chatting. The sun had set, and the cornfield in the distance looked like a black ocean, deep and swaying slowly in the wind. Suddenly, Zara fell completely silent. Her eyes locked onto something, right between the rows of corn. A nervous look came over her face, and in a low, uneasy voice, she asked, "Did you see that?" Dylan's heart dropped, because yes, he had seen something too. In the corn, there was a tall, straight figure. Something that just didn't belong. Even in the fading light, its shape stood out. But by the time they looked again, it was gone, or maybe it had ducked back down. That night, Zara didn't say much. But the next morning, she kept asking Dylan, "What was that?" And Dylan had no real answer. When he finally pressed Uncle Mike for information, even showed him a newspaper clipping, Mike just sighed and muttered, "These fields look straight, but they don't stay that way." Then he walked off, like he didn't want to say anything more. That silence made everything feel worse. One afternoon, driven by curiosity, Dylan and Zara went into the cornfield. The plants were tall, uniform, and strangely quiet, their dry rustling almost like whispers. Deeper inside, they stumbled on something odd, a perfect circular pattern where the corn had been flattened, like someone had deliberately cleared the area. The dirt was wet, and in places it looked freshly disturbed, like someone had dug into the ground. Dylan joked, "Crop circle?" But Zara didn't laugh. She just looked unsettled. Zara started to change. She wasn't sleeping well. One night, she told Dylan, "I swear someone stands outside my window at night." Dylan checked outside. There was nothing but rows of swaying corn. But he couldn't forget what he had seen either. Now he realized he wasn't the only one it was happening to. That night, Dylan was jolted awake by a sound soft but eerily clear. A rustle ... rustle ... step, stop. Like something tall was moving slowly through the field. Something with heavy footsteps that didn't sound entirely human. Dylan walked to the window and tried to look out, but saw nothing. The noise continued, and then suddenly stopped. The next day, Dylan took the tractor out to fix part of the field. Around midday, as he neared the edge by the fence, his eyes froze. Just a few feet from the fence was that same figure. Tall, unmoving, rising just above the corn. It didn't move, not even slightly, just stood there. Dylan's hand froze on the lever. He blinked, took a deep breath. And when he looked again, it was gone. This wasn't just in Dylan's head anymore. Zara had seen it too. Mike wasn't talking. And now, strange patterns were appearing in the fields. Things that didn't make sense. Something was out there. Something that had always been there. And now, it wasn't just in the fields. It was watching them, and waiting. Mike wasn't the same anymore. His eyes always seemed anxious, like something inside him had cracked open again. Dylan noticed. Mike avoiding him, dodging questions, acting distant. One night, Dylan heard him muttering to himself, "It's back, isn't it?" His voice was shaky, like he recognized a fear he had buried a long time ago. That's when Dylan realized Mike knew something about the cornfield, something he wasn't saying or couldn't say. So Dylan and Zara decided to find out for themselves. They started marking areas in the cornfield where the soil felt different, damp, soft, and oddly foul-smelling. In one spot, while digging, they found strange objects, a rusty old bicycle bell, and a faded blue kid's cap, the kind you'd see in 80s cartoon shows. Zara held the cap in silence, her face a mix of fear and confusion. Dylan instantly remembered the old newspaper clipping, the 3 kids who vanished while playing in that same cornfield back in 1984. Could these things have belonged to them? Then came the storm, heavy winds, thunder, and pouring rain. Dylan and Zara were out in the field but got separated in the chaos. A few minutes later, Zara called out for Dylan, but her voice was lost in the thunder, and then she was gone. Dylan searched everywhere, the farmhouse, the backyard, even near the old silo, but there was no sign of her. Her phone was found in the cornfield, and the GPS trail stopped dead in the center of the field, like the line had been wiped away mid-step. Dylan was losing it. Zara was just gone. And now that shadow? It wasn't just watching anymore. It was moving closer. Alone, Dylan grabbed a flashlight and entered the cornfield again. He came across that same flattened circular patch, but this time, the ground looked slightly sunken, like something heavy had been sitting there. Or like something had tried to crawl out. Dylan's throat went dry. Then, from deep in the corn, he heard it, that soft rustle, and a slow, steady inhale. When he turned the flashlight toward the sound, he saw it. And this time it wasn't a shadow, it wasn't a shape. It was there, tall, pale, and vaguely human. But not human at all. Its arms hung low, almost touching the dirt. Its face was smooth, like a clay mask, with empty, hollow eye sockets that stared, lifeless. It didn't move a step, but Dylan felt it getting closer, inch by inch, breath by breath. Meanwhile, Mike made one last attempt. He tried calling the sheriff, but the line was dead. He stood on the farmhouse porch, staring into the cornfield, and quietly said to Dylan, Some things aren't meant to be stopped, only seen. Then he walked inside and locked the door. Dylan ran through the field and made it to the truck. He was just about to start it when his eyes locked onto the hood, and what he saw made his blood run cold. The same circular pattern was scratched into the truck's hood, like something had scraped it from the inside. The metal smelled like wet, rotting soil, the same smell they found in that sunken patch of the field. Zara was never found again. Police filed it as a missing persons case, but Dylan knew she wasn't just gone. At least not in the way we understand. He left the farm a few days later, moved out of Iowa, never went back. But even after he left, every year, on that same date, drivers, farmers, and random passersby kept reporting the same thing. We saw this tall figure near the cornfield, real tall, completely still, just standing there, and then it started getting closer. No one ever saw it walk away, because it never leaves. My name is Jared Collins, and I'm a 33-year-old freelance travel writer. A few months ago, my wife Becca and I took a week-long countryside road trip through the Appalachian region of Virginia. The goal was to explore some remote, lesser-known backroads so I could write about new off-the-map locations for my travel blog. Becca was a little uneasy, especially because the area felt completely deserted and our GPS kept glitching. We had taken a gravel road near Shenandoah National Park, the kind of road that felt like no one had driven down it in years. Dense trees lined both sides, and the air had a foggy, still feeling. Becca looked at me and asked, "Are you sure we should be out here?" I reassured her, "This is backcountry. This is exactly what we came for. Don't worry." We kept driving slowly along the gravel road, nothing around us but forest and silence. That's when Becca spotted something, an old Ford truck up ahead, just sitting off to the side. It was completely covered in dust, but the weird part was, the engine still felt warm, like someone had just driven it and left it there. Both of us froze. I pulled out my camera and started recording. Becca noticed a half-open duffel bag in the truck bed. Her face instantly changed. Inside were blood-stained pages, torn clothing, and an old notebook. I opened the notebook and started flipping through it. The writing was chaotic, broken words, incomplete thoughts, like someone's mind was slowly falling apart. Some pages were just random letters, others had disturbing journal entries and scattered warnings. The last page had one line written, in what looked like red ink, "Don't stop on this road after dark." We panicked and called the local sheriff's department. Deputy Officer Taylor picked up, asked for our location, and said he'd be there in about 20 minutes. We stayed close to the truck, standing in silence as a cold chill moved through the trees. Becca looked more terrified than I'd ever seen her. But then, when we stepped away for just a moment and turned back, the truck was gone. Only a faint set of tire marks remained on the dirt road, and next to them, a rusty chain lying half-curled on the ground. Becca said softly, "When?" I looked in the window. I thought someone was sitting in there, but he didn't move at all. He didn't even turn his head. He looked like a mannequin. A cold shiver ran through me. That quiet, empty road deep in the woods had suddenly felt like something else. Something watching. We got out of there as fast as we could, but ever since that day, that truck, that notebook, and the warning on the final page haven't left our minds. Was there really someone out there on that gravel road? Someone or something that comes out after dark? And what exactly did that warning mean? Don't stop on this road after dark? I don't know. But I can't shake the feeling that the real horror of that trip hadn't even started yet. When Officer Taylor showed up, the serious look on his face already told us this wasn't just some random incident. He looked at us and said, "If you'd asked the locals, you never would have taken this road." That's when he told us what people around here call it, the vanishing route. As soon as he said the name, the air around us felt heavier. He took us to the local police station and pulled out reports from the past 15 years. It showed that at least 9 people had gone missing on this same gravel road. Most of them were solo travelers or couples. None of them were ever found. My heart started racing. Were we about to become just another story on that list? That old notebook we found by the truck. It started changing. I know how that sounds, but it's true. Every day, it was like someone or something was messing with the pages. New words started showing up. On one page, it said, "It's not the road, it's what follows you after it." That line shook me. It wasn't the road itself. It was whatever came after you left it. We didn't understand what it meant then. But deep down, the fear started to grow. Becca's condition started getting worse too. Every night, she had the same nightmare. A man sitting in the truck with no eyes, just black empty sockets. In the dream, she would scream, "It's in the mirror." That alone sent chills down my spine. One night I was sitting alone in our car, and I swear, I saw that same truck in my rearview mirror. But when I turned around, there was nothing there. I looked back at the mirror, it started fogging up, and then just faded to black. That night, every hair on my body stood on end. A few days later, we stopped at a small town diner. The waitress there looked at me and quietly said, "If you saw the truck, don't try to find it. It doesn't take you anywhere, it changes you." The way she said it, I could tell she wasn't guessing. She had lived something. And suddenly, it hit me. This wasn't just a creepy story. It was something real. Something terrifying. That night, I opened the notebook again, and what I saw made my blood run cold. The final page now had everything about our trip written on it. Our names, the dates, even little things we did. It was like someone had been watching us, following us. Like we were part of some sick game. Then we found something even more disturbing, an audio file on Becca's phone. She never recorded it, but it was there. A deep, slow voice kept repeating, "You stopped, now it waits." That's when I knew, whatever this was, it wasn't far. It was close, waiting, and we were stuck caught in the middle of the vanishing route. Where roads don't end, they begin something else. Something much darker. As the days went by, Jared started to fall apart. He couldn't focus on work, and he hadn't slept properly in nights. That old truck's shadow haunted him like it was watching from somewhere just out of sight. The notebook, which once seemed like just a strange artifact, had now become part of his life. Jared kept trying to erase the last page, but every time the words came back. It was like someone or something was rewriting it against his will. One morning, Jared woke up and Becca was gone. Her phone was lying in the middle of that same gravel road right where they'd first seen the truck. Fresh tire marks circled around it, like someone had left her there. Jared panicked and called for help, but Officer Taylor's tone had changed. He was distant now, like he already knew what had happened to Becca, but wouldn't say it out loud. All he said was, "Don't go back to that road." But Jared's heart didn't listen. He went back to the spot where it had all started, and there it was again. The old truck. Same as before, like it hadn't aged a second. The engine was still warm. But this time, someone was in the driver's seat. A shadowy figure blurred, just like the one that had been haunting them all along. Jared pulled the notebook from his bag. A new line had appeared. "You wrote the end. Now you're the story." It hit him. He wasn't just writing the story anymore. He was the story. A story with no clear ending. Later that night, Jared stood outside his house. That same truck was parked across the street. Its headlights were on. But the engine made no sound. It just sat there, waiting, quiet, patient. Jared disappeared after that. He cut off all contact, stopped writing online. His final blog post was a single cryptic line. "Some roads don't lead anywhere. They take you instead." And the story ends with the narrator's voice. I don't know where Jared went, but that old notebook still sits in his empty cottage, and whenever someone opens it, the last page changes, this time with your name on it. The story doesn't end. It begins. A terrifying journey that never really stops. So that was our final tale from 3 scary true countryside horror stories. 3 stories that seem simple on the surface, but beneath them hide fear, mystery, and something unknown, something that could change your life forever. If you enjoy real, disturbing stories like these, make sure to subscribe to Chilling Talks. Hit the bell icon so you never miss our next creepy tale. Tell us in the comments which story scared you the most. And don't forget to share this with your friends so they can feel the fear too. And remember, true fear always hides where you least expect it. Stay close, because next time, something even darker might be waiting.